The food eaten by enslaved people on American plantations was not chosen for comfort or pleasure. It was shaped by control, cruelty, and survival. Enslaved Africans were rarely given enough food, and what they received was often of the lowest quality. Yet from these limited rations, they created meals that sustained life and culture. Plantation owners typically provided weekly food allowances. These rations usually included cornmeal, salt pork, lard, and occasionally molasses. Fresh vegetables were rare unless enslaved people grew them themselves. Meat was scarce, and when provided, it was often the least desirable cuts. Corn became the foundation of survival. Cornmeal was boiled into mush, baked into ash cakes, or fried into simple breads. It was filling, cheap, and easy to store. Though bland, it kept people alive. Salt pork was another common ration. It was heavily preserved and often rancid. Still, it provided fat and calories. Enslaved cooks learned to stretch small pieces of pork by flavoring large pots of vegetables or grains. Hunger was constant. Many enslaved people supplemented rations through gardens they tended at night or on rare free days. These gardens were acts of resistance as much as survival. Okra, collard greens, peas, and sweet potatoes became vital foods. Foraging was also common. Enslaved people hunted small animals, fished in nearby waters, and gathered wild plants. Rabbits, turtles, catfish, and greens filled gaps left by plantation rations. Rice played a significant role, especially in coastal regions. Many enslaved Africans brought rice-growing knowledge from West Africa. Rice became both a labor crop and a food source, though enslaved people often received inferior portions. Food preparation was exhausting. Cooking took place after long days of forced labor. Meals were often cooked in large communal pots, designed to feed many mouths with very little. Despite these hardships, enslaved people preserved African culinary traditions. Seasoning techniques, cooking methods, and flavor combinations survived under brutal conditions. These traditions would later shape Southern cuisine. Survival foods were not just nourishment. They were emotional anchors. Sharing food strengthened community, offered comfort, and preserved identity. Plantation food systems were designed to control bodies, not nourish them. Malnutrition and illness were common. Yet enslaved people adapted, innovated, and endured. Understanding these foods is essential to understanding American history. These meals tell stories of suffering, resilience, and survival under unimaginable conditions. This is not just food history, it is human history. Beyond the basic rations issued by plantation owners, enslaved people relied heavily on their own ingenuity to survive. The official food allowances were rarely enough to sustain the intense physical labor demanded of them. As a result, survival foods became a combination of what was given, what could be grown, and what could be found. Gardening was one of the most important survival strategies. Enslaved people were sometimes allowed small plots of land, often at night or on Sundays when labor demands eased slightly. These gardens produced vital foods such as sweet potatoes, yams, beans, peas, squash, and greens. Every harvest meant the difference between hunger and survival. Sweet potatoes were especially important. They were filling, nutritious, and easy to grow in poor soil. They could be roasted in ashes, boiled, or mashed. For many enslaved families, sweet potatoes were a primary source of calories. Greens such as collards, mustard greens, and turnip greens were another staple. These plants grew easily and provided essential nutrients missing from plantation rations. Greens were often slow cooked with small amounts of fat or pork to create filling meals. Okra, brought from Africa, became a critical survival food. It thickened soups and stews, making small portions of food feel more substantial. Okra represents one of the clearest examples of African food knowledge surviving slavery. Fishing was another lifeline. Rivers, creeks, and coastal waters provided catfish, perch, eels, and shellfish. Fishing often took place at night or during stolen moments of rest. Fish could be eaten fresh or dried for later use. Hunting. Small animals supplemented diets when possible. Rabbits, possums, raccoons, birds, and turtles were hunted using traps, snares, or simple tools. These meats were shared within the community, strengthening bonds among enslaved people. Foraging for wild plants added variety and nutrition. Wild onions, berries, nuts, and edible roots were gathered based on generational knowledge passed down orally. This knowledge was crucial, as mistakes could be deadly. Food was rarely wasted. Bones were boiled for broth. Skins and scraps were reused. Leftovers were stretched across multiple meals. Survival required constant calculation and restraint. Cooking methods reflected scarcity. One-pot meals dominated because they conserved fuel and maximized flavor. Stews, soups, and porridges were common, allowing small amounts of ingredients to feed many people. Despite extreme hardship, enslaved cooks developed deep culinary skill. They learned how to balance flavors, stretch ingredients, and make food satisfying under impossible conditions. These skills later shaped Southern American cooking. Food also served as quiet resistance. Growing personal crops, hunting, and sharing meals allowed enslaved people to reclaim a small measure of control over their lives. Meals were moments of humanity in a system designed to strip it away. Sitting together, sharing food, and passing traditions created emotional survival alongside physical survival. The foods eaten by enslaved people were not chosen freely, but the way they were prepared often was. Within these meals lived memory, culture, and dignity. Understanding these survival foods reveals how enslaved people endured a brutal system while preserving their identity. These foods were acts of survival and acts of resilience. Food on plantations was deeply tied to power. Enslaved people did not control what they were given, when they ate, or how much they received. Meals were tools of management, calculated to keep bodies working rather than healthy. Yet within these restrictions, enslaved people carved out their own food systems. Weekly rations were often distributed unevenly. Adults performing the hardest labor might receive slightly more cornmeal or pork, while children and the elderly received less. Even these small allowances were inconsistent and depended on the plantation owner's priorities. Cornmeal dominated nearly every meal. It was boiled into gruel, baked into coarse bread, or fried in fat when available. While filling, it lacked many nutrients, contributing to widespread malnutrition. Still, enslaved people depended on it because it was often all they had. Salted meat was issued in small quantities. Often it was old, tough, or spoiled. To make it edible, it was soaked, boiled, or used only for flavoring. A single piece of pork might season a pot meant to feed dozens. Molasses was sometimes included in rations. It provided quick energy and sweetness. Mixed into cornmeal or eaten sparingly, it helped offset hunger, especially for children. Water access also affected food. Clean water was not always available, leading to illness. Soups and stews helped purify water through boiling, making them safer to consume. Cooking spaces were limited. Many enslaved people cooked outdoors over open fires. Weather affected meals, and cooking often happened late at night after exhausting labor. Despite these conditions, enslaved cooks developed structured food routines. Certain days meant certain meals. This predictability helped communities cope with uncertainty elsewhere in their lives. Spiritual and cultural meaning was attached to food. Certain dishes carried memory of Africa ancestors, and home. Even when ingredients changed, methods remain. Rice dishes in particular reflected African heritage. In regions where rice plantations existed, enslaved Africans often knew how to cultivate and prepare rice, yet they were rarely allowed to eat the best quality harvest. Pepper, herbs, and wild seasonings added flavor when salt was limited. Knowledge of seasoning transformed bland rations into meals that could be endured. Food sharing reinforced social bonds. Those who hunted or fished shared with others. Elders taught younger generations what was safe to eat and how to prepare it. Food scarcity shaped discipline and patience. Enslaved people learned to eat slowly, save portions, and plan for days when nothing extra would be available. Illness and injury increased food insecurity. When someone could not work, rations might be reduced. Community sharing became essential to survival. Food was also connected to punishment. Rations could be withheld as control. Hunger was used as leverage within the plantation system. Yet even under such cruelty, enslaved people resisted dehumanization. Cooking, sharing, and remembering food traditions affirmed identity. These survival foods were not just calories. They were expressions of endurance, creativity, and humanity. To study them is to confront the reality of slavery, not abstractly, but daily, bodily, and intimately. Food tells the truth where records remain silent. The survival foods of enslaved people cannot be separated from the emotional and cultural weight they carried. Food was one of the few areas where enslaved communities could express care, memory, and resistance within a system designed to strip them of all autonomy. Meals were often shared communally. Large pots fed many people, reinforcing cooperation and mutual support. Sharing food was an act of survival, but also an act of humanity. It reminded people they were more than property. Children learned early how food worked. They learned which plants could be eaten, how to fish, and how to stretch small portions. Elders passed down this knowledge quietly, ensuring survival across generations. Women, especially, played a central role in food survival. After exhausting labor in fields or houses, they cooked late into the night. Their work kept families alive. Their knowledge became the foundation of future Southern cuisine. Certain foods held deep symbolic meaning. Greens represented life and renewal. Rice connected people to African heritage. Okra, yams, and black-eyed peas carried memories of home across the Atlantic. Cooking methods preserved culture even when ingredients changed. Techniques such as slow simmering, layering, flavors, and seasoning with limited resources reflected African culinary traditions adapted to forced conditions. Food also became a form of emotional refuge. A warm meal after brutal labor offered momentary relief. It provided comfort when nothing else could. Celebrations were rare, but when they happened, food took center stage. Holidays, births, or marriages were marked with special meals whenever possible. These moments reinforced identity and community. Enslaved people also developed food economies. Extra produce, fish, or hunted meat was sometimes traded or sold. This created small pockets of independence within an oppressive system. Religion and spirituality influenced food practices. Certain meals were tied to prayer, remembrance, or hope for freedom. Food and faith often intertwined. Plantation kitchens became sites of contradiction. Enslaved cooks prepared lavish meals for owners while surviving on scraps themselves. This contrast deepened awareness of injustice. Yet those same kitchens became spaces where skills were sharpened. Many enslaved cooks became highly skilled chefs, though their names were rarely recorded. Food traditions survived emancipation. After slavery ended, formerly enslaved people carried their survival foods into new communities. These dishes evolved, but remained rooted in necessity and resilience. Much of what is now called Southern food originates in these survival meals, yet the people who created them were often erased from history. Remembering these foods requires honesty. They were born from suffering, not nostalgia. Honoring them means acknowledging the conditions that shaped them. These meals tell stories of endurance, not comfort. They remind us that food can carry pain, memory, and strength at the same time. To understand these survival foods is to understand how enslaved people maintained dignity in the face of systematic cruelty. Food was never just food. It was survival, culture, and resistance. The survival foods of enslaved people on plantations are not relics of a distant past. Their legacy lives on in modern American cuisine, cultural memory, and ongoing conversations about history, justice, and recognition. After emancipation, formerly enslaved people carried these food traditions into freedom. With limited resources, many continued to rely on the same ingredients and methods that had sustained them during slavery. What changed was ownership for the first time. Food could be cooked by choice, not force. Many survival foods evolved into community staples. Dishes built around greens, beans, rice, cornmeal, and slow-cooked meats became central to Black American foodways. These meals carried stories of endurance and creativity. However, history often erased their origins. Foods created under slavery were later renamed, commercialized, and separated from the people who invented them. The resilience behind these meals was rarely acknowledged. Understanding survival foods requires confronting uncomfortable truths. Plantation food systems were designed to extract labor, not nurture life. Hunger was a constant threat, and survival required relentless adaptation. Yet within that cruel, enslaved people built systems of care. They taught each other, shared resources, and protected knowledge. Food became a quiet form of resistance, a way to preserve humanity in inhumane conditions. These foods also shaped future generations. Children raised on survival meals grew into adults who passed down techniques, flavors, and values. Even when ingredients improved, the mindset of making the most of little remained. Today, many people rediscover these foods through food history, genealogy, and cultural preservation. What was once dismissed as poor food is now recognized as foundational to American cuisine. Remembering these foods must be done with respect. They should not be romanticized or reduced to novelty. They represent lives lived under extreme oppression. Food history is incomplete without acknowledging who cooked, who labored, and who suffered. These survival foods tell stories that official records often ignore. They also teach lessons relevant today. Ingenuity, community, and respect for food remain essential in times of uncertainty. The ability to survive with limited resources is a skill shaped by generations of struggle. By studying these meals, we honor the resilience of enslaved people. We recognize their intelligence, adaptability, and strength. Food can be a bridge between past and present. It allows us to engage with history in a tangible way. Through taste, memory, and reflection, these survival foods are not symbols of weakness. They are evidence of survival against unimaginable odds. To remember them is to acknowledge humanity where it was denied. This history deserves to be told carefully, honestly, and completely, because these meals were never just about eating, they were about living.